This conference will now be recorded.
This was our first Sunday of the year now that we are open. We're open 12 to 6 on Sundays. So right now is kind of our go forward hours that we envision for most of the rest of the school year until May comes, until we reduce hours a little bit again. All that could change, depending on how things shake out, but we have a solid plan with availability that way. The other big thing going on is as I talked on a little bit last month, was how we have open gym now and how we're structuring that a little different than we have in the past, where we have a maximum capacity. People have to sign in and do that. Well, since last meeting now, what we have had to do is we restricted open gym only to St. Peter residents and school district residents. And this was done just because with our limited capacity now, we're seeing about 80% of our participation that got in the door would be from out of town. And what end up happening is our St. Peter residents then weren't allowed access to the gym. So we let that play out for about the first 3 or 4 weeks that we did open gym, and that trend was not changing. So then we identified to switch to this model. So far things are going pretty well. There are still some days that we get pretty close to capacity or at capacity where maybe some people will have to get turned away. We expect to see that only increase though as we get into the winter months now and kind of shift from our fall sports season to our winter sports season. We're already seeing some winter athletes get in the gym and try to get going with that, and then our other attendees will be impacted that way too. But we're making it work for the most part. We're doing a good job following the rules as our participants that are coming. Other community center updates, all our tenants are operating in some form or fashion, and things are going well for them. All offices are open. However, some have a limited capacity for who's working in the office or at home or remotely. But that's what I had for community center tonight. Any questions on that?
None from me. Scott, did you want to talk about this next one, or is this Pete?
I'll take this one. Basically, what we've done at Public Works here this year is most of our crew schedule changes have now gone back to normal. When summer staff comes in, we do have to break our crews up to try to meet some of the social distancing requirements. But everything is pretty much back to normal now. We still have split crews for lunch and a lot of our meetings. Our work with the public, I would say, has been restricted just a little bit related to how we intermingle in our parks. But nonetheless, they are getting good use. It's been a very good year for our facilities. Scott and his crew have done a really nice job of making sure that everything's working, and we've had a good reception there. We are planning to close most of the park restrooms here this month. So you'll see a little bit of change there. Again, with the colder weather, it's probably a couple weeks ahead of where we normally are. We usually try to get to Halloween, roughly the end of October before that happens, but we will be closing those down based on the weather. We've had a couple of requests for porta potty extensions out at CSP. Because of the fall activities that the school's going through, and so we're going to leave those out there a little bit longer and try to accommodate whatever we can for the fall athletic season. And that's what I have for you for Public Works updates for October.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like you need some action from us tonight on the pest control.
Yeah, I'll just touch base real quick, Mike, if I could. Last month we talked about having you guys approve the integrated pest management plan, and we kind of reviewed it in large or in depth, I guess, from last month's activities. Really talked about all the activities, and I guess if there's any questions, Scott or I would try to answer those. Otherwise, we're looking for formal approval of this policy to run the plan as we have identified.
Any comments or discussion from the field on this plan?
We have received none here. If there's questions, we'll try to answer them.
I do just got one question, kind of related. Have we done any emerald ash borer treatment yet this year, or is that a winter treatment? I can't remember.
Yeah, we have injected 33 trees this year as per our plan. Those are the ones that we identified, and we did accomplish those and have completed that work within the time frame.
Well, if there is no other discussion or questions, let's get a motion to adopt this plan.
Brian from our office here moved that.
Okay, can we get a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of the plan at hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Yeah, Scott did a nice job on that. We'll get that put into our policies.
Okay, now the improvement plans for Minnesota Square.
Yes, what I'm going to do now is turn this over to Scott. He'll take over here and he can just go through the structure of the existing park and what we've done as far as identifying different improvements along the line. And really what we're looking for is a review of this plan tonight and just open it up for discussion, and we'll be bringing this back in November for approval. Jeff, you want to take over?
Hello. So as discussed on from last month's meeting, we kind of discussed the outline of what we're thinking, and it was brought up about the parking, the diagonal parking along College Ave, right in here. So we went and got some estimates on what it would typically or kind of basically cost. It'd be somewhere upwards to 60 to 70,000. There would be 14 stalls, 4 handicapped, and I'm sorry, there's 14 just regular stalls with 4 handicapped, so 18 total. We see a benefit for that in the instance if so there's handicap down here towards the wall, the veterans wall, and then there's just more handicap towards the plaza, and then hopefully in the future we can, create more going along all the sides in theory. Outside of that, as you've read through the plan, it's just a lot of it's focused right now where we want to focus on this plaza part. Just kind of want to get that going so we can kind of outline where we're headed with that park. You guys had a month to look at it, I guess. Is there any concerns, questions, input, negative, positive? We'll take it all.
Can you refresh my memory? What's the phased approach on this? Is it the plaza and the parking? Or is it like, what is the number one? What's the first in order here?
Well, we kind of want to start, I think I can highlight this. Yeah, I can. So we kind of want to start there next year is where we're gearing up to kind of give an intro of how it's going to look going forward, and probably go a little bit somewhat down, along the sides here on each sidewalk to give the public an idea of where we're headed. There's money's allocated, so it's just kind of where we want to go out and put the plaza together first.
Okay. And that's the whole plaza, not just a highlighted section. It's the street to the pavilion.
No, it wouldn't make it all the way to the pavilion. It would literally just probably roughly be in that little square.
Okay.
Roughly. Yeah, it's about halfway. Yeah. It's actually 140 feet off of the road. Or the sidewalk, I'm sorry.
So as far as the phases are concerned, Mike, what we would look at doing is getting the electrical put in there first. And then doing some bits for the concrete and for the planters along there. The parking, we would try to budget, it probably would be a 22 thing, just because we have to go through a cycle to get funding from MSA for that. College Avenue, as you're seeing here, is an MSA road. So to get it, have that be eligible, we'd have to take about a year to submit an application, tell them what we're trying to do. And then when we do the street improvements in there, we can incorporate the parking improvements.
Okay, I understand now.
Yep, and then so we're also working with other entities along the line to raise funds for platforms and for another small structure in there. Adjacent to where the second stage during Rock Bend is done. Right where Scott's drawing that little square. And so that is just something that appeared here in the last couple of weeks in our discussion. We were approached that way with some goals there. So we're going to work with Thompson and Hobby on that issue as well. What we do there would look like a smaller pavilion, kind of a second stage where the group that's donating the money could have the 4th of July issues going on there. They could have their little meeting and participate with the chamber and ambassador.
Okay.
So we love your feedback, as Scott mentioned. If you guys have questions, concerns, do you like the format you're seeing on the master planning document? Do you get the information that you're needing to make decisions? You like to see it differently, or is it okay? When you read it, does it communicate to you what our intent is? I love it.
The idea of it going forward would be is, so obviously this is one park, but we would want to just implement this format throughout the rest of the parks as well. So more so of what we're wanting is the feedback is if this is, like Pete was saying, communicating what we're trying to achieve.
How long would it take us at our current funding levels to get everything done on this this little information you got for us for all these projects?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Mike?
Yep. So how many years do you think it would take us to get everything done on this this sheet you gave us, all the way down through the splash pad and the parking and everything else?
Yeah, depending on funding, roughly 10 years.
Okay.
And again, the idea behind this is we do get a set amount of money each year based on a plan that we put together for city council approval. It doesn't cover probably a tenth of what we want to do, but we want to have these issues ready. So let's say Sand Volleyball comes in and says, we want to donate as an association $500 to you. We've got to identify what that priority is. And then they can look at that and say, yes, we'd like to participate here in order to boost that in our parks.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep, and so that if people say, I want to see irrigation, now we have partial irrigation set up for expansion. So let's say Lions Club came in and said, well, we'll help you irrigate between the plaza and the Vets Memorial. We can give them a ballpark and they can go out and raise those funds and come in and accomplish that.
Okay, so you want to keep this on our front burner and then talk about it next month again for action, you said?
Yeah, what we'd love is any comments you have, feel free to email Angie, Scott, or myself. Give us some feedback. And then what we'll do is implement any changes that you guys feel are worthy and bring back to you a finished product and ask you to approve the Minnesota Square Park Master Plan at the November meeting.
Any discussion anybody want to have right now? Opinions, gripes, concerns? Okay, let's move on to the 2024 plan.
Okay. In your packet, feedback that we received last meeting was we should reevaluate a few of the issues related to that plan. As you guys know, I wish I could have this. Can I rotate this in? Did you say? There we go. All we gotta do is that a couple more times. Okay. So what you're seeing here is things that we are in the process of doing. If you guys remember, those of you that have been on the Parks Board for a few years, when we initially found out we were going to have some additional funding, we set out a 5-year program. And what we did was prioritize 5 different areas on how we were going to accomplish certain capital improvements within the park system. And as you can see here, our #1 issue back in 2019 to be completed in 2020 was roughly $140,000 for playground equipment at Veterans Park. These were broken down into areas related, as you see the gray highlighted areas, those were the main categories, and then underneath that were certain activities within that system. So for parking, trails, and sidewalks, we have Minnesota Square Plaza, roughly $140,000 budgeted, and roughly $415,000 if we did the whole thing at one time, which we do not have all the funding for. But as we've talked about here, we have identified the top 2 areas that we plan to work, and those include the plaza and then any sidewalk that would remain above and beyond that. Now, this doesn't take into account the electrical improvements, which we have budgeted for within the electric utility, and then any other donations that we may get working with, say, the Veterans Memorial Group or whoever else would want to come in and donate along that line. Scott and his crew have got this all laid out, and our process would be we'll move forward with that recommendation. The thought process, though, for this year will be, as we get into 2021 with this plan in place, is to have you guys focus on this structures and this activities through here that I have highlighted, roughly to give you an idea of what lies ahead of us. And we can either talk about those activities and get some ballpark numbers together. We can take feedback. You can email Angie and just say, here's what I see going on, and then we can reshape that. There might not be a lot of merit trying to talk about 15 items. If we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 already identified, more than likely we'll use up a majority of the funds. But as you see here, our #1 issue back when we did prioritize these in 19 was working with Hallett's Nature Area, Galt Park, Warren Park, and Jefferson Park on a lot of those activities. And what you're seeing here is about $100,000. We'd have roughly $40,000 to get into another facility, which could be done by putting utilities in or concrete pad or whatever. If you guys have questions or concerns, let's just open it up for questions and discussion and or feedback on priorities. One of the things that's not on here that we have been approached by is the River Valley Dog Park. They are looking at trying to raise funds for their area. And it is right down here. It's not on the priority for it for activities here, but again, they're looking at raising roughly 10,000 is their goal, I believe, and then they would be looking for the city to participate by doing some of the labor as we have done in the past. So again, when you have individual associations and groups that bring money to the table, what you will see is something that we don't necessarily have as a priority on here could get completed. And that's a good thing as far as we're concerned, because they've already received some funding from the city. And so moving forward, if they can raise adequate funds, we certainly want to participate with them. Right. What Brian had stated here in the office was the dog park seems to have a lot of traffic going through it right now.
It is. I'm wondering if we. I'm wondering. This is Mike. I'm wondering if. We might consider reprioritizing over the next 4 years. To focus on Minnesota Square Park.
That certainly is an option, Mike, to do that. Just want to get feedback. The goal is we have so many needs that it's really tough if we just focus on Minnesota Square. We don't really spread the wealth from that point of view, but certainly it's a point of discussion.
Pete, this is Shannon. I have a question about the shelter planned for Warren Park. I'm pretty familiar with Warren Park. I'm wondering what the shelter will be like. What is it most similar to that I would know from another park in town?
Yeah, part of our discussion was we want to have buildings that look like they were in another park at the city. And if I remember right, my staff is reminding me that it would be similar to what's in Gorman Park.
Like the sort of the one kind of up on the hill?
Right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Similar in design and structure there. Right, yeah, so Scott had mentioned that we would look at having one with 4 to 5 picnic tables that could hold some of the community or neighborhood events in that area.
And it would be available for rental? I'm assuming the one at Gorman is rented out?
Yes, absolutely.
May I ask another question, as long as
Sure.
nobody's asking a ton? I'm curious about the restroom facility at Prairie Ridge. I was kind of surprised by that one because there are some other, like for example, Warren Park that don't have a restroom facility. So I'm just wondering kind of where that was prioritized and if that was part of the plan when the development was first being planned.
I believe the utilities were installed there with the idea that when it gets built out, there will be a need there. And probably haven't met that requirement yet for a number of homes that it would really serve to be efficient from that point of view. I think that might be part of what Mike is looking at is if we're putting a lot of resources into parking trails and sidewalks, do we want to do more at Minnesota Square instead of piecemealing that over the next couple of years? The one thing that council has been direct on, and that is they're open to whatever we wanted to do, but we need to have a plan that shows them, hey, here's where the money's going the next few years. And so you could do a couple things in the shade structures and passive areas. And then any remaining funds could be shoved back into Minnesota Square as well. I mean, that's always an option of your choosing. Just we really need to talk about that direction and what we want to spend there.
But the chances of us getting to number 5 on that list, Pete, are pretty slim, right? With the dollars we have.
Right, yeah, you'd only get partial work there done in the first place. If you spent roughly $100,000 up above that, you could funnel the remaining dollars towards improvements. The one thing that might change, remember, we did apply for grant funding, and that is based on matching funds that would be needed if we were grant successful at Minnesota Square. So as Mike had mentioned, our goal has been to do quite a bit of work at Minnesota Square, but if we got a grant and we had to have 50,000 in cash, we would come back and ask you guys to take something else off the list and move it to Minnesota Square so we'd be grant eligible. Emily, did you have a question?
I was gonna comment on just, the structure of things, and I guess I'm of the opinion that it's probably good to spread the work a little bit to some of the other parks. And, there's been a lot of focus on Minnesota Square for the last several years. Just wanting to make sure that other parks are, getting the maintenance and the upkeep that they need as well. And so that's maybe my view on that for the time being.
Sure.
You have anything to say, like, or what would be your, I guess, is it from a staff perspective, the next most important park? If Minnesota Square has the most work from a dollars perspective and a work, what would be the next one on the list, do you think?
You could pick about any one of them. I know when Scott and I have been out, and Joey, we've looked. It's been 25, 30 years since we really did anything there, and it's starting to show. And we have a lot of traffic through there on a summer day. So that would be one of the things that we'd probably want to look at. And then that's kind of down the road here a little ways, but that's lacking as well.
Which park did you say, Pete? I think the mic cut out.
Mill Pond.
Okay.
If you look at some of the shade structures and the sand volleyball and just the playground equipment, I mean, you can put $500,000 into that area without much trouble.
So based on our current 1 through 5, is there any desire to bump that Prairie Ridge restroom down and bump up the dog park need?
Yeah, we think we've got things worked out at the dog park with them. We've made it pretty clear of what they need to do and what we'll do for them. That's really about a total cost for the improvement that they're looking at. So if they come up with the structure, we've got the pledge from staff here on how to get it put in there.
Okay, so no need to reprioritize that money?
Right, I would say that you won't have to. We've kind of worked that deal out with them, but I would say the Mill Pond or any of the other areas along the line there, you could easily pull out and start working on some of those for 21 or 22. I'm sorry.
Anybody have any needs or desires for a park that's near and dear to their heart that they want to bump up on the list here?
Well, McGill is my neighborhood park, and that's probably the most likely one in town.
Yeah,
I would say. And I know there's not much of it. There's not a lot of traffic there.
right. But that may be one of the areas Brian had mentioned. McGill needs a lot of attention. So what I want to do is just try to explain here where your focus is at. It's on shade structures and passive picnic areas. So McGill, to me, would be a trail area, and we do have safe routes to school money that will be coming up in 22 or 23.
Oh.
So we're going to be making some changes there through grant money that we received through MnDOT. But I've got it written down here because that's one of the things that we might want to supplement, how we get kids through that trail or the nature area, compared to the sidewalk. Some kids will walk on the sidewalk, some will run down the dirt. And what do we want to do to implement that? But that'll be another discussion coming up for that.
I'd like to see maybe the mill pond get bumped up if that place needs to be updated.
And it's aging quickly.
Yeah.
So move Prairie Ridge out of the equation there and then make Mill Pond a 5, and then you guys can talk about really your 1 through 5 options there. Nothing there is set in stone, so you can renumber those. If those are your top 5, stay there and discuss what you see as a priority. And then Joey and Scott and myself can take that and get some numbers finalized for you.
Okay. Is there any objections to reprioritizing those two things? Moving the bathroom down and mill pond up?
Right. How do you guys feel about the priority setting? Do you like how they're numbered now, or is there any number that you want to see changed or moved? Right now, that'd be about $140,000, 135 to 140, which is about what you have for funding with Prairie Ridge out of there.
I guess my only question is Warren got enough traffic and need for
a shelter?
Yeah. I mean, we used to go there some, but I haven't been over there too much for a while, but I mean, is there, I'll say demand for it, but is there demand for that?
Yeah. You know, it varies because there's going to be growth eventually there.
I suppose, yeah. The neighborhood's kind of stagnant right now, but it's probably going to change in the future.
I had the same question as well, just because I know Mill Pond is used for a lot of different events, you know, school picnics and things even there. So I was wondering this, I had the same question essentially.
Sure.
Okay.
Emily, I just wanted to point out that I do like that Hallett's Nature Area is #1 on that year's list. Just, I think that's an area that has seen lots of use over the years and could really use some extra TLC as well. So I look forward to more development in that area to make it a real nature area over the next several years.
Okay. Any other feedback on #1?
Oh, I would agree with that.
Okay. How about #2? That's Gulf Park, shaded observation berm in there. That was basically prior to the development of Community Spirit Park, but having an area where kids and parents could sit along the berm. Yeah, there is a lot of traffic there. Yeah, yeah.
There is still a lot of use there for soccer?
Yes. Quite a bit.
Will the association contribute at all to that cost, or are they not active in that way currently?
No, they are active in that way. We haven't approached them with that. What did we approach them with, Ange? It was a grant for Community Spirit Park. We asked them to donate to the restrooms that we're building out there. So we've had some contact with them and just general discussion. They need to know a little more about it, but certainly are interested in that because their youth program would be out there and then they can apply for grants. So that would be one of the activities that we would encourage them to participate. But we certainly can approach them. They do give us an annual amount of money that we've used for painting and maintenance of really the soccer fields right now. Again, that's the association model that we kind of use with all of our major groups. So that certainly is a warranted discussion. Would be something as simple as you guys buy the shade. If you can buy that, we'll get it put in with the amenities there. And then you've got the 2 shelters. Maybe what I would suggest is that both Warren Park and the Mill Pond, probably similar in design, similar size shelters. Have those be 3 and 4 and Jefferson Park be 5, just for the mere fact that Jefferson Park's probably one of those things where we're going to approach the softball association and say, hey, can you buy the shade? We'll get it put in.
That all sounds good to me. Any objections to the current potential order?
So we can knock out almost all.
Yeah, we should be able to knock out all of that. And we'll work with Olson and Hobby on the structures a little bit so that we have the St. Peter look to them. And same with our shade structures. So just so you guys know, when we work with the dog park people, Scott's got a couple of shade options for them to look at and pick that are really what I would call the St. Peter standards, so that if you see that, you'd kind of know you were in a St. Peter park. And so when we look at shade structures, whether they're at Galt or the dog park, they're probably going to look similar to some degree, as far as the same type of shade structure, maybe the same color, maybe the same angle of the roof or whatever that would be.
Okay, any further discussion on 2024 plan?
And then if there's any feedback on the other activities coming up in 23 and 24, let us know. We always want to try to stay 1 year ahead if we can. So we're going to have this discussion here again, probably coming up in the next few months as we start working out some of the details of those activities.
Just one quick question, probably going backwards, which playground are we tackling next? Or are we still waiting? When will we be going back to buying more equipment? That's
probably as we run the cycle or money becomes available, we would go back to what looks like Stones Park.
yeah, that's no good.
Yeah. And you guys can decide if something else comes up, neighborhood parks or Minnesota Square has been on our list for.
Yeah, I know.
Minnesota Square could be forever. As you can see here, it's a pretty good size. So really it depends on what we can do. Our staff is always applying for grant funding. So we're out there looking all the time for different activities. And so the one thing I would ask you is please don't put your feet in cement, because as we get money, we want some flexibility to try to make things work. And I know Angie and Joe and Scott are all looking at different things that we can try to get money for.
Okay, thank you, Pete.
Yep.
All right, I have nothing for the chair's report this evening. That kicks it over to you, Joey.
All right, in your packet, September activity report is attached. As you'll notice going through those details in there is still a pretty heavy mix of in-person and virtual options for our community, and both are going really well. Some of our in-person stuff we had to max capacity, so they're smaller programs than we've had in the past, but have had good response, and for the most part not having to turn people away, but mainly filled those up. You'll also, one thing in there as well is, so our senior fitness program, we've seen that came back, and what we heard from some of our participants is, so we moved it to from one of our upstairs fitness rooms to the gym at the community center, so we could accommodate for that population and allow them to social distance and do it comfortably. Masks are worn, But what we've heard from that population is there was quite a few of them who were hoping for a virtual option, whether their doctor recommended them not to go in person to senior fitness, but knows the great benefits of that class. And so what we started to do is now we have a virtual option for everyone. So you sign up and you get access to the in-person class or the virtual option at the same time. So you could be coming in person for 2 weeks and then maybe have a cold or something and just not want to expose other people and attend virtually, or some of our attendees are attending virtually only. So that's been a great success. So I think we have 35 seniors in that class this session, which is going great. And some of them are so proud of themselves that they're are making virtual work for them at home and have been doing great with that, and still being able to get a little socialization out of that class, because that's been so huge. Such a huge part of that class is the socialization that the participants get. As always, if you see anything in that activity report, please let me know if you have questions or anything like that. To jump into fall programming, early October we had Active Aging Week, and that was a great success. Gabriella, our assistant program supervisor, has done a wonderful job with that. This was the first year that we really fully participated and had a formal Active Aging Week. She had programming each day of that week. That was the first week of October, and huge success. A lot of businesses actually contributed to make that program go. We did receive a grant from Mankato Clinic Foundation, and this had really nice participation. The week was capped off with a mini senior expo, since we didn't do our full-fledged expo as normal. Some other fall programming updates: we did a drive-in movie Friday night that library staff put on, showed the Addams Family movie. That was maxed out at our capacity limits and went over very well on Friday night in the community center parking lot. Pickleball's on the list next, but I'll touch on some outdoor stuff in a second. But the indoor part of that for fall programming is, now that the weather's shifted, our pickleball participants have moved into the community center. Due to COVID, they have a brand new set of rules on how that program's run. They have to pre-register up to 48 hours before the session, and then we have restricted spots at 16. So we're running 4 courts inside instead of 6. And so that's a huge change instead of just showing up like it has been in the past and paying at the door or whatever. But so far that's going well, and we're seeing a lot of participation that way, but a controlled participation, which is good. Although our daytime group has been very hardy. They even played outside this morning before it started snowing. So pretty crazy. And then they came in and played a little more. So I don't know if Eli was there. I don't know if Eli was that crazy to play outside. So, but good for them. But to touch on a little more pickleball, so Pete, Scott, and myself, we met with our pickleball group to discuss the possibility of some outdoor pickleball courts or outdoor pickleball complex. The city has set some money aside for the possibility of developing pickleball courts at Veterans Park, where as of right now we have 4 tennis courts there. One option would be turning 2 of the tennis courts into 6 pickleball courts and having a pickleball complex there. And wanted to re-engage our pickleball group since it's been before COVID happened, where they were actively fundraising for a project like this. So we re-engaged them last week and just got a little more of their thoughts and started those lines of communication on what we do with our other associations, where we bring some money to the table and hopefully association matches that or helps that project go. So working on that, the group's excited about that. They're starting to formalize an active revenue stream and start some fundraising efforts. So you might see a lot more of that coming, and the possibility of getting some pickleball courts in 2021, if everything goes well. So any questions on any of the reports that I touched on?
Yeah, Joey, this is Emily. Just curious on as far as the open gym time. When kids come in or when people are coming to use the gym, is there a COVID screening process? Do they have to come in, answer questions or get their temperature taken, or what's the process right now?
Right. So what our expectations are right now is we have an open gym attendant, and they're stationed right inside our only open door of the gymnasium. So all other entrances are locked from the outside. So they have to come in the north side. They have to have a mask on when they walk through the community center and get into the gym, and they have to sign in right there, show that they're a St. Peter resident. On our attendant then has a checklist there that has the COVID from MDH. It's your standard checklist about symptoms. We just remind them of that. So we're not temperature screening at this point or anything like that. So far, in any of our facilities, even when the pool is open, we haven't done the actual temperature checks. Now, one of the screening checks is, do I have a temperature? One of the rules with that is, if you're younger than 12 years old, you have to be with an adult. So we hope that, if someone of that age is able to tell if, they're not feeling well. So if any of those check off, then we ask them to come back when they're feeling better. With anything, our participants in open gym are pretty used to a different process. So we've really been working hard to make sure we're following those rules really, as close as possible. And it's a learning curve for some of them. Even having a form of identification, we get the same kids coming 5 days a week out of the 7, and then they think they don't have to show identification anymore because they did it one time. Well, we have different staff there all the time, so we're constantly reminding them this is why we're doing that and stuff like that. For the most part, things are going well. The issue with indoor activity with COVID going on, though, is once you're inside exercising, you can remove a mask, and if we have anyone in the facility that would be positive, I think it would be pretty easy to spread. But so far, we haven't heard that that anything is spread from open gym, at least contract tracing wise. But that's why we're having a sign-in form and that type of taking down that type of information every time people come, just in case we get called for contact tracing.
Thanks, Joey. That was helpful.
Okay, Pete.
As far as we received an application from the River Valley Dog Park to adopt the Thompson Dog Park, and so we'll take action on that and get a sign for them over there. Get some things put up. Just wanted you to be aware of that. And then the other outlier that we've been discussing with the city council on the budget process is Community Spirit Park restroom facilities. We've had some questions on how much money we want to spend out there. Initially, we had a restroom design that was about $210,000, and roughly located near the trail on the north end and west of the softball fields. So if you were looking at the map on the screen here, the little kids' soccer fields are just to the south of that or to the left of this building here. If you've been out there, you've probably seen the irrigation pipe sticking up. That was where the intended room is supposed to be. We've done some changes. We've taken off the concession stand. We have the price down to roughly $150,000 right now. We'll have some other additional discussions with the school related to how they see their facility. This building was worked on and designed based on the school's request to want to have restroom facilities moved up. And so our city administrator made the effort to try to make things work with the school. As you guys know, we have a cooperative agreement that talks about how we make things progress out there. This is really a financing thing for the school. It would impact us because the 5 things that we just identified on the master plan would change once we know where this number is with the budget. And so we would come back to you guys at that time and ask to reprioritize that. So I wanted to let you know that the city council's having this discussion. This would probably come to the city council for approval or not, I guess, in the budget process, which would be December. So sometime in January or after, we would have another discussion related to this facility. Just wanted to bring you up to speed on where that's at and where it's located. It is. Yep. What we would try to do, as you can see on the last sheet here, members, we would try to get that cost down even further. So Scott and his crew are looking at what we can do to do a variety of different things. We have about $15,000 in contingencies, roughly 10%. So anything that we can do to manage this ourselves. We don't have a mason on staff, so that's kind of where the construction needs to be done professionally. But we can do some of the sidewalk and utility installations along the line here. It would be our ultimate goal to get down even further, maybe knock another 25,000 off of that price if we could. And that's all the updates that I have, Mike, for today. Any questions that we can answer?
Not from me at this time. Any other questions from anybody else? Okay, I see the next month's meeting is the 16th at 7 p.m. and we also have a tree advisory. So I anticipate that being about another 45 minutes longer than normal.
Yeah, probably a half hour. We'll have a summary of all the activities, EAB and everything this year for that meeting. So it'll be a little more reading, but then it'll be questions and answers.
Okay, if no one has any other questions or comments, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn. I second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you everyone, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.